welcome to Fridays Are for Families. We're so glad to have you joining us this week. This week we are back with another interview, and we're going to be talking a little bit about what discipleship looks like in the home. And we're so glad to have you joining us and to have you part of this conversation. As a reminder, we do this as an effort to show you what discipleship looks like in the homes of some of our staff members here at Pathway Church, and just to invite you to consider that it looks very different in every home, right? And so as you listen, we invite you just to consider and learn from what we talk about, and just to consider what it might look like in your home as well. And so with us this week, we have Pastor Jeff. Hello, Pastor Jeff.
Hello there. Thanks for the invitation.
Yes, welcome. We're glad to have you here. This is your first time on Fridays Are for Families.
It is. It's a privilege.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Well, if you would maybe just start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and your role here at Pathway, and then also throw in your family. Tell us about your family as well.
Sure. Yeah. So, senior pastor here at Pathway. Been here for just over 25 years now.
Yeah.
And it's been a great run. Pathway has been a great place to not only serve, but also to raise our kids. And when we came to Pathway, they were 9 and 6. And so they were young, so a lot's happened over the course of that time. Of course, grown and out of the house now. Senior pastor, 25 years here, and our kids, like I said, are grown and gone. Melissa and Megan, 2 girls, and our oldest, Melissa, is married and has given us a granddaughter that we're very excited about, little Mila. She's just over a year now. And both of our girls actually live in Columbus, Ohio. And our oldest is married to Josh, and they're just a joy. We love seeing them, and we do have that opportunity oftentimes to do so and to hang out together. But they're all in careers and gainfully employed and off of my payroll. And so, well, for the most part, off of my payroll, but doing great. And so we're excited about that.
That's awesome.
That is. I just realized between the 3 of us, we have 9 girls.
9 girls, wow.
4, 3, 2.
Yeah.
Like, that's a granddaughter.
And no boys.
Yeah, that's just impressive. It's unique.
We should know something. Maybe you can.
I don't know.
Maybe you're the expert. I don't know. I don't consider myself the expert.
Jenna's got 4, so she's got.
She must be the one who really knows has it going on. Then.
Yeah.
About girls, or I don't even know about that.
Yeah. Oh man.
I feel like I'm constantly stumped by.
Girls. There's always something.
Yeah.
There's always something.
So kind of our first question is just thinking about family discipleship in your home as your girls were growing up. Obviously married to Carolyn, and thinking of being a senior pastor, that's a heavy load outside the home and things like that. But Carolyn also, at least now, is in a full-time job as well, and some of that. But in the home, as your kids were growing up, what did your roles look like in the context of family discipleship, like between you and Carolyn?
Yeah. Well, it was different at different times. When our kids were born, we made the decision for Carolyn to stay home, actually, and that was something that we've never regretted. It made for some very difficult, challenging times financially to do that, and I know that not every family is able to do that, but it was something that we chose to do so that Carolyn could have as much influence as possible during those formative years, and we've never regretted that. But that put her very much on the front lines, just day to day with the kids, and she was always there, and always was able to help guide whatever circumstance, situation, spiritually speaking. I was obviously working, and so wasn't as present kind of during the day sort of thing. Although the pastoral role did give me opportunity when there was something that would come up to be able to engage or to be present, especially when they got into school and activities and after school things or whatever. That was great. But so she was very much the frontline person from the very start, and I would be as actively engaged as possible, whenever I was present or after school or in the evenings and bedtimes and prayer times. There are always conversations, or every once in a while Carolyn would would leave something for when Dad got home. But she didn't need to do that, and she was very capable of handling all of those circumstances. But so she was very engaged. When they got into school, she would oftentimes drive them to school, and to this day, she talks about the valuable times of being just in the car. Right after school, it's on the kids' minds perhaps, and something that would come up.
Yeah.
And so a conversation was launched, and just to be able to be present in those moments was something that was that she is very happy of having had that opportunity.
Yeah.
So it was different. I guess most of all, we just tried to, whenever present, just be ready to engage with wherever they were and whatever was going on.
That's good. It seems that the car is a recurring theme.
The car is a recurring theme.
Yeah, I mean, Jenna's talked about it. Janine talked about it. I've talked about it. Like, it's really been like a recurring theme of just like discipleship. Like, you spend a lot of time. I think Jason talked about it as well. We spent a lot of time in the car, right? Just in transit from things, waiting in car lines and things like that too, just picking kids up. And yeah, it presents like unique opportunities. We've kind of talked like, wonder if it's because you're not like face to face, like they're behind you and kind of like in a different posture, and like maybe it opens up the lines of communication, or there's not much else you can do but like talk in the car.
I think sometimes they don't realize either what is happening. They're just, because it's not a sit down conversation at the dinner table that's a little more formal. I think there's just a natural
I think that's true.
aspect, and even just listening in the car to like their chatter and picking up on things, and then just kind of hopefully landing those well-placed questions.
That's right. That's right. Or when one of their friends are in the car, and you hear they're having conversations they might not even have with you, but you hear it, you pick up on it, you understand some more of what's going on in their lives through that window.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's true.
We often talk about discipleship in the context of moments in time. And so moments, we often tell families, are those things that just pop up, like car rides and, temper tantrums and, that question at bedtime that just kind of like is like, oh man, you're going to ask that question right now. Those are things that you have to be prepared for, but you can't necessarily plan intentional time for because they just pop up. But we also talk about family discipleship as time, that we want to set aside intentional time in the life of our family, where we're setting aside windows of time to say, this is a purposeful time when I'm going to disciple. What did that time look like for your family? When did you set aside that time to be with the girls and to talk to them about faith?
Yeah, it's interesting to have you bring it up in that fashion. One of the things that I've always thought, reflecting back now with the kids grown and gone, was just the desire to engage in faith conversations whenever. And not just conversations, but that would just be the life that you were living, that faith applied to everything. And it many times, I think our most significant conversations or contributions just happened spontaneously. It wasn't that it was, okay, it's 4:30 and it's Tuesday, and so this is what we do on 4:30 at Tuesday, but rather just trying to apply all of faith to all of life. And it seems to me that was some of the most valuable stuff, or the most impactful, or the things that the kids might even speak to even today about what was, transformational perhaps for them, was just something that happened in that regard. But there definitely were times that we were being very intentional. In fact, daily, there were things that we were doing every day to try to make sure that there was that kind of engagement. And it happened, it wasn't always the same. Certainly one of the things that was consistent every single day was the bedtime stuff. The stories that were involved with that, the prayer that was involved with that. We tried to make that fun and different and not just kind of rote and routine. And so we'd try to sprinkle other things in, or even silly stuff with, I was always the one responsible for how we would determine who's going to pray first, what the order of prayer was at bedtime.
That's a big deal.
And so they laugh at me about how I'd come up with something about their some their third hour teacher spelled their name backwards, and the one who had the third letter that was nearest to this, you pray first and you're second, just weird stuff, but things that would just kind of just sprinkle in something different. They said that made a difference. But so bedtime was always a very important time, and we'd try to take extra time for whatever the story was, and we didn't usually just read Bible stories. We'd often tell stories or make up stories with moral or biblical principles and that kind of thing, which tried to just keep it fresh. And it got to the point where they started to be the ones telling the stories and making it up, and so that was fun. Carolyn also did a great job with them through some of it was different depending on what their age was, and it looked different. But we always tried to have there be some important learning time, growth time in the Word, learning something more or new about God. Carolyn actually came up with these different journals, or they would go and the girls could pick out a journal, a prayer journal, and then depending on their age and stage, what they might write in that prayer journal was wherever they were, right? But eventually, devotional things. Carolyn actually did a great job of tailoring devotionals. So instead of just reading, here's our devotional book and here's what it is for today. And there's nothing wrong with that, to be sure. But she would take the time to think about, well, where are they? What's their developmental stage? What are some things that I'd love them to be thinking about, and would actually create their own devotional out of that, maybe a passage of scripture and some targeted questions. And then we always would have family time sitting around kind of discussing some of those questions. So on a daily basis, we would do that, and then maybe not every day, but more on a weekly basis, dig into those journals or into those, not their private journals. We allowed them to have private journals that they would go ahead and write their prayers and those sorts of things, but to get into some of the responses that they would have put to some of those questions.
Yeah, wow. So it sounds like you were very intentional in what you did. And obviously your daughters are pastors' kids. So I'm assuming during this time, they're all like sitting there just paying great attention and just dialed in to this
every time,
this tailored message that Carolyn has developed for them that day. And it was just never squirrely kids, just always paying attention. Is that how that went?
Yeah, usually.
Yeah, okay. So we can skip that question.
No, as you might imagine, it did not always go exactly how you might have planned it.
Yeah.
In fact, sometimes I think it rarely went the way that you planned it.
Yeah.
And that's going to happen. I mean, that's going to be just the way that it unfolds. They're at different places in their own mind that day, that stage. There are certainly seasons where it seemed to go a lot better than other seasons. And there were times when it's like, is this working at all? Do we keep doing this? Are we on the wrong track here? Should we just throw in the towel on this? Should we just give up altogether? Where are we on that? But it was seasonal. And so just as there was a season where you're like, oh man, what can we do better, different? There were seasons where it just kind of started seeming to hit on all cylinders. And it was like, this is fantastic. And I think the thing we probably learned in the midst of that was hang in there. Just stay faithful to keep it going. And it's not always going to work perfectly, but just keep going. And as discouraging as that might have been in seasons, there were times when it certainly felt the payoff.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I've seen often it's the moments that I don't expect, or the moments where I feel like it's a disaster and all of a sudden somebody asks a really profound question in the middle, and it's like, all right, this is worth it. It's those reminders that are so important. You have now the advantage of being able to look back on years of discipleship. You have grown daughters who are following the Lord, and this granddaughter that is now being raised in faith. As you look back on those times, what benefits do you see from the time that you spent discipling your kids?
That's the payoff. I mean, that's what's going to get me emotional. The payoff is enormous. It's not, and there is a payoff today. We saw the payoff along the way also. There were a lot of times of praying for friends who weren't in faith, lots of times of just praying for whatever's coming up, whatever's happening, and to see them then come and say, I remember one occasion when Carolyn and I were talking about something, which is a whole other thing I maybe should have brought up, just the idea of drawing your kids into where you are also. It's not just their lives, we're all living lives, right? We all have hurts and challenges and issues that arise. And so they see that, depending on their stage, they see that, they know that there's something going on. It's like, draw them in and let them be involved in praying for it or navigating it or seeing real life, this is the way that you take and apply it. So we saw in those days, I remember one occasion when there was one of those things going on, and one of them, I don't remember which one, said, "Well, Dad, don't you think you should pray about it?" Out of the mouth of babes, right? It's like, I probably should pray about that. You're right. But to see them today, just to see their walk of faith, to see the way that they're engaged, they all lead small groups, and they're all involved in their church, and they're all serving and doing things, serving the Lord, and raising that granddaughter in faith. And Jesus is central to who they are and the decisions they're making. And just to see the fact that it's been picked up and is moving forward in another generation and another one beyond that yet to come, makes all of those challenges, those prayerful nights, those sleepless nights of praying through, are we on the right track? Are we getting them the foundation that they need, to see that having paid off and to see where they are makes whatever stages or whatever steps were necessary in the meantime, in the process, well worth it.
That's so good.
It is.
Well worth it.
Well, thanks for sharing all that.
Yeah. Thanks for breaking me up. I appreciate that.
It's really our pleasure to do so.
Is that the goal of these conversations?
It's not. It's just one of the benefits.
I mean, when you talk about your kids and you talk about their faith, it's just bound to.
It does get emotional.
Well, it is.
For sure. So, but I feel like I take so much value from these interviews. So I hope everybody else does too. But truly, just hearing that, you have those moments in the thick of it where you almost wonder, is this worth it? And then to hear the payoff, yes, absolutely it is. And so that's what keeps you going in those hard moments is I want to see that payoff at the end, and knowing not that it's a guarantee, right? But it is doing what I can as a father in the life of my daughters to be able to be intentional, to be investing and to keep going, even if it's not going well, even if we're not clicking on any cylinders. If we're like my car this morning where I turned the key and it was nothing, it's even if that's happening, you have the times when it does finally click or they ask those questions or whatever. And so this is just super encouraging to me, if no one else. So I do appreciate that. But now as a grandfather, what term did they land on, by the way? Do they call you grandpa? Or is she going to call you Grandpa?
It's too long a story to share the whole thing here. The quickest piece, okay, they call me Papa Jefe. But
Whoa.
That's
there's
amazing.
I feel like that actually
there's
deserves a
lot
long story.
behind- well, there is a long story. But Bapa, B-A-P-A, was what I called one of my grandfathers that I was very close to, and I like the name. I like that it sounds like that's a grandpa name, but at the same time, it's not, terribly common at the same time. But mostly it's a nod to a grandfather that I had that meant a lot to me. Nice. And the rest, the Jefe part, I'm just going to leave as a mystery for maybe some other occasion when we've got more time, we can dig into the rest of that.
Does that mean Jeff or boss, or is it Grandpa Boss?
Okay, all
boss
right. Very
Grandpa?
quickly.
Yeah.
Jefe is Spanish for boss. So when my kids were growing up, in the youth group, they had a PK club, Pastor's Kid Club, with other pastor's kids who were here at Pathway. And so they all called me Jefe. It's kind of like Jeff, look, Jefe, it kind of looks like Jeff. And so that's just what they all called me. Yeah. That was like my nickname. And so I knew I wanted to be Papa, and they wanted me to be Jefe, because my kids still kind of call me Jefe from time to time. And so while we were deciding between, Carolyn needed to figure out her name, and it needed to match her name, just so involved, all this. You have to pick your own name thing. I thought it was just whatever the kid could call you. That's what it would become. So in the meantime, there was too much delay in their minds. So they said, well, we're just going to call you both. So that's awesome. So it's Papa Jefe. So
I love that.
It is what it is. So we'll see what Mila actually. I'm just working on Papa. That's what I'm trying to get for right now.
I think you have a good chance with that. That's those syllables will come out.
She's already done it.
Good.
I mean, it might have just been my ears, but I'm pretty sure it's the first thing that came out of her mouth.
Most likely, yeah.
Well, if you would have given me like 1,000 guesses, I never would have landed on that. So that's
so
good.
True.
So anyway.
Nice.
That's great. Yeah.
All right. Well.
So do we have any more questions, or are we going to end with the encouragement?
I think the last question that I might have is just regrets. Is there anything that you look back and you think like, man, I wish I would have done this differently, or man, I wish, any of those wishes?
I think there's always, which one of us does perfectly everything that we wanted to do? There are always regrets. And I think that's one of the things that we need to be mindful of, is that we're going to fail along the way. And I think by the grace of God, one of the things that we learned to do was to fail publicly in terms of them, the kids. And they knew we were failing. They knew something wasn't right. We had the choice: are we going to try to snow them? Are we going to try to pretend that something is different than it was? Somewhere we had heard or learned that, no, admit your mistakes, apologize to your kids for the fact that you blew it before them. They already know it. And if you refuse to admit it, they're just going to learn everybody hates hypocrisy, right? And so they're just going to see it in you, and it's going to teach them that the best way is to deflect or to lie or to pretend, and so there are plenty of things to regret, but when we do those things that aren't what they should be, just to acknowledge this isn't what it should have been. I'm sorry, and we're growing in this too.
Yeah, that's good. So again, you've already given a lot of encouragements, but if there were like one final encouragement or message that you could give to families that are maybe in the thick of family discipleship, or maybe living right now like in a regret or something like that. Is there any encouragement that you would give to families?
One is stick with it. You're going to fail. There are going to be circumstances that you should have done differently, and you just didn't. There are going to be times when I should have engaged with that. I should have answered that question. I knew that there was something going on in their mind and heart, and I was just too tired. You can circle back around. Kids are resilient. Kids see genuine, heartfelt faith. They see it. And whether they've been shown it all the way along, or whether it's something we're at a stage of, I should have been doing this when they were young, and now they're teens, and I'm wondering if it's too late and they're lost. God is doing a work in all of our hearts, in our kids' hearts. And whether it's stick with it because you've been at it a long time and you're going through some of those difficult stages, and it's like, I'm just not sure it's worth it. So that'd be one piece. The other is engage fully. We want our greatest desire, I pray our greatest desire is to see our kids raised in godly things and in the faith, and that we need to be living that. We need to be displaying that ourselves. I think it was Spurgeon that said, train a child in the way they should go, and you should make sure you're going that way too, or something like that. Just the authenticity of living your own life before them is one of the things that's going to have the greatest impact, and we can always do that. So don't expect our kids to grow to be something that we're not being ourselves.
That's good.
That's great.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us today too.
Again, thanks for the invitation.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
And thank you all as well for tuning in to this episode. We pray this has been an encouragement to you. And as you are on this journey of family discipleship, just realizing and understanding, hey, it's not all easy, and it's not meant to be. We're all growing, we're all in process, and sometimes parenting is challenging. Sometimes, you're just tired and you're struggling and different things, and discipleship doesn't feel maybe as much of a priority, or wherever you may land in those moments. His encouragement to stick with it and to keep going, and to know that, like, hey, we're here along this journey with you as well, and our desire is to help you, is to pray with you, to pray for you, to encourage you, to resource you to do all those things, just knowing that we're on this journey together. So we thank you that you tune into this and just participate with this, with us in this. But also we encourage you, if you have questions, if you need prayer, if you just need somebody to talk to about where you're at in your discipleship journey, we encourage you to reach out to us. You can email us at family@lifeatpathway.com. You can go to the website, it's family@pathway.com. Check out other resources that we have as well. And again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Fridays Are for Families.